Greetings, welcome, and salutations, listeners of XEP. Welcome to the community episode for the month of February, exclusive to the patrons of XEP at first, and then later on hitting YouTube for everybody else. We hope you're having a fantastic day. Today, of course, I am joined by one Captain Logun. How are you, sir?
Good. I'm still working in the podcast industry.
You're still working in the, but that's more than some people can say about the games industry, so... Oof, what a day. Today was the red wedding for sure. We are also joined by, of course, Rick, a.k.a. Butch4969. How are you, dude?
I'm doing well. Good to be here.
It is good to have you. I know that we've already had this camera working just fine, but I do miss the Xbox 360 camera.
Maybe I'll downgrade for the next one. We'll see.
Maybe we'll see. Yeah, all right. I'm for that one. And joining us,
probably not.
I still do want to see it sometimes. It's like an Easter egg. And joining us for the first time, of course, the one and only XEP super fan. He hates the PlayStation Trophy Room. Silking it. Hello, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
I want to compliment you on making the right choice. I've never liked the PlayStation Trophy Room. Joe runs a weird show over there, and so you made a good choice being here. Thank you.
Now, I'm a Patreon over there too, but it's for Kyle.
Well, guys, February, I think a less packed month in terms of like critical hits that you have to play than January, but I know we all like picked on to something, locked in, and played quite a bit. Mine is an amusing one in that I'll be talking about Suicide Squad, which is, it's an emotional journey for me. But I'm curious, Rick, what game were you playing through the month of February that you wanted to bring to the table?
Well, first of all, I want to start by saying I can't disagree with your statement more, as there has been an insane amount of good stuff in February.
What do you
just don't
mean?
like JRPGs. There hasn't been or you don't like JRPGs, so it hasn't been there for you. But
now hold on. I have to interrupt, and I'm so sorry. If JRPGs were popular this month, I feel like Clint Coombs would be here. You know?
Yeah, well, the trader chose not to not to show up to help us take over the show. But what can I say?
I started Final Fantasy VII Remake as a new JRPG fan, and have been enjoying the JRPG genre, and will commit to playing at least another 10 minutes of that for the sake of this podcast and the confirmation that there has been a ton of JRPGs out this month.
I might play 10 minutes of it while we're on the show, just to prove solidarity with you.
There you go.
But not so. I don't remember exactly the dates of things, but I believe Grand Blue Fantasy Relink either came out late, very very late last month, or early this month. But this one also had Persona 3 Reload, which I grinded a good bit of. I'm not nearly as far in it as I would have liked to be. I was hoping to finish it before Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but I am not even remotely close. As I mentioned, in less than 5 hours now, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth comes out, and I will cease to exist from the rest of the world for some time. When did Infinite Wealth come out? Was that this month or was that last month? I don't remember.
It was like the 28th or 29th of January.
Okay, so very late January. So there you go. There's genuinely 4 bangers right there that was within just a couple weeks.
Butch, I gotta ask, with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, is it weird that they made a remake of a remake so soon?
Rebirth is not a remake of the remake. It's just
boy, that joke swung and missed. Poor Logan. Poor Logan.
I realized it was a joke, but I don't quite understand what you're trying to say, so I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. They went super serious on me on that one.
They did. You lost.
We don't joke about Final Fantasy VII, man. We don't joke about that. But no, I cannot wait. I've been counting down the minutes, as you probably can tell, until Rebirth comes out here, and I am very, very excited to dive in.
Yeah, it's true. When I asked how you were doing, you were like, I'll be better in 4 hours and 17 seconds.
Yes, indeed.
So it really was a good month then for JRPG fans. It's just that I'm not in that realm. Is that right?
Without exaggerating, it generally might be the best month of all time for JRPGs.
Okay.
Just like there obviously have been better ones that have released, but it has been high quality just after high quality. And I mean, if you're a JRPG fan, Silking It, you can attest to this. You can't even keep up right now.
No. I wanted to play Persona 3 before Rebirth, and I gave up.
Yeah.
I was too entrenched in other games, and that game is just too long.
But then, was it late last week is when the reviews came out for Rebirth, and they are just glowing. Like, it's already looking like a pretty hot contender for Game of the Year, and I thought it would be good. I thought it would be good. I mean, I thought for me it'd be Game of the Year, but I didn't think for a lot of people it would. But it sounded like it's really going to be in that discussion when the time comes.
Is this one is currently still PlayStation exclusive, not even on PC?
Yes. Yeah. Correct. They have not even, they've announced 16 for PC, but that has not even come out yet. So I would imagine that'll be first. They only confirmed a 3-month exclusivity window for Rebirth, and I guess theoretically that could possibly go to PC faster than 16, just because they have the intermission, which is the like extended part of Remake on PC. So I assume it's probably the same engine. Might be a little quicker to translate that over to PC than it is to make the whole of 16. But I mean, I would guess they're not going to do both at the same time. So I would think 16 probably would come first.
Interesting. Do you anticipate, as a JRPG fan, and so and you're a PlayStation gamer primarily, you corrected me on that, I think last month, right? Like, you main on PlayStation?
Yeah, I just didn't want to sound like I don't play on Xbox, because I most certainly do. Gotcha. I probably play PlayStation more than Xbox. That's all.
So
I don't play on Xbox.
You don't play on Xbox at all, right, Sokanet?
No, I don't own a Series X or S.
Interesting.
When it came time to decide XS or PS5, I already had plans to have a good PC, and Xbox were just shifting to play everywhere, play anywhere. So all their game comes to PC, and my PC is way better than any console can be.
Okay,
so, that's not possible. These are new gen game consoles.
So I have all right. So that raises a couple questions. Then remind me to come back to you going to PC and PS5, Sokanet. But Rick, I'm curious, with PlayStation, on the day we're recording this, it's like a day or so after layoffs that they've had. We know that they've had low returns on their games, despite putting out just incredible exclusive after incredible exclusive. In the JRPG space, do you anticipate seeing some of this stuff day and date onto PC? Like, would that bother you in any way?
I mean, nothing bothers me. So long as it's where I want to play it, I don't care if they put it on someone's toaster. But I just want it where I want it, and that's the only part that matters to me. So to answer that part, the other part of, do I think it'll come to PC day and date? It depends. I actually am kind of surprised that they didn't do that with Rebirth, since I believe Remake did sell pretty well on PC, and I'm sure 16 will, because so for those that don't know, Final Fantasy 16 is directed by Yoshi P, who is the director of Final Fantasy 14, which outside of Fortnite right now might be the biggest game in the world. And if you see a lot of fans of 14, they're pretty rabid fans. And so I think a lot of people that were fans of 14 really were like, okay, he's directing 16, I'm in, I don't care. So I expect that one will do well. Although, I mean, Final Fantasy specifically obviously has it started on Nintendo. It's pretty well associated with PlayStation at this point, since 7 and on have all at some capacity launched there. But other things, that's a little bit tougher, because if you look at historically, I would say Japanese RPGs just tend to have a far more what's the word here? Like, the dedicated fan base tends to be much more on the PlayStation side of things than anything else. It doesn't mean those fans aren't elsewhere. There's certainly a fair bit of them on Switch and stuff like that as well. We had, Bravely Default and Octopath Traveler and stuff like that as well. But I think if the last few years have showed us anything, Square Enix are a little leery about bringing things that they're not confident are going to sell elsewhere to other platforms. Even in some cases, bringing those things to PlayStation. The original Octopath Traveler, for example, is still not on PlayStation, which is bizarre. Then Octopath Traveler 2 comes to Xbox. Comes to PlayStation and Switch, but not to Xbox. So it's really weird. Square does things very strange. And I think when you get to some of the more single A, less popular ones, I don't know if they'd have much of a fan base on PC, and that's why I think they're a little more afraid to take them anywhere other than a Nintendo platform or a PlayStation platform.
Okay, then that brings up Silkenet. Do you feel similarly to Rick in that case, given that you've got your console of choice, and then PC is kind of your jam to get the rest?
Yeah, I don't see PlayStation going day and date on PC. I think their players are really attached to the exclusivity, and they will try to kind of keep that for a bit. So like we see a 3-6 month exclusivity period, like guaranteed for them, would make sure that they sell their product on their console, and then they can try to get some more money on the PC side. And yeah, personally, I'm like Rick. I don't care where a game comes out as long as I can play it, and I make sure I can, because that's my hobby. I have a Switch, I have a PC, I have a PS5, I have a Game Boy analog, and the Playdate.
So what we're
So
saying is, I need a different job. I need to do whatever it is you do. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm not a teacher. We don't have the patience, but we need you. We need you.
Yeah.
We don't really need my job.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, I was just going back to why PC and not Xbox, since I touched on that earlier, and it really came to Xbox strategy. Like we heard a lot about that in the past weeks, and I think I'm kind of the examples that Xbox would want to show people. I had an Xbox One, but I still have an Xbox One X. Played a lot on it, but when it came to the switch to the new generation, I had to make a choice, and I can do way more with my PC, apart even from gaming. So I decided to invest in that and play with the Xbox app and the PC Game Pass.
Was that the right choice? Are you happy with that choice?
I'm really happy with that choice. Last year, just with 2 games, my Game Pass subscription was I paid for it with Starfield and Lies of P. Just with if I had bought these 2 games, I would have paid more than the full year of subscription, and I still played, according to the Xbox wrap up, I played 200 hours on Game Pass. So it's
pretty decent.
It's a pretty decent deal. I can't complain.
Yeah, no kidding. I guess it makes more and more sense to do just that if you're interested in, or even tolerant of, PC elements, right? Logan amusedly, we do it in jest, but also he knows that I don't like the production technical side of things, and so PCs intimidate me. But he is living in a world, you're living in a world where you have access to more games as a result of not choosing a console.
It's to the point, basically, PC is almost an extension of Xbox now. So if you have a gaming PC, you have, 70 to 75% of anything that'd be available on Xbox anyway. So
I would say right now, almost 100%. There's a few Xbox 360 games that you can't play, maybe the first few Gears of War. But for the past 3-4 years, everything's been on PC too.
Gotcha.
And they have a commitment now for forward to continue that.
Are you? This one's going to Logan next. Logan, you've been playing Helldivers on your PC lately, and this month Helldivers has been all the rage. Talk to me about that experience.
I mean, it's been really good. I've had a really fun time with Helldivers. I think the gameplay loop does a great job of drawing you in and just giving you that kind of arcade feel that you miss from certain games. You know, there's no story really tied to this. There's a level progression system, but the level progression system really doesn't feel like it impacts, you know, like your character. You aren't looking for better gear too often. Like the armor itself doesn't matter. The weapons are kind of, you know, your preference. The stratagems are realistically the biggest change to your gameplay style. But once you get to 20, that's completely unlocked. So for me, it's just one of those games that I love to go in and just clear out an area, hit all the camps, complete all the objectives, collect all the things that I need, and move on. And you just repeat that. You've got, you know, a 40-minute loop for one mission, or you can go out earlier and stuff. And it just has the kind of feel that you get when you play through like a Gears game and you're just moving from level to level to level. And it's really fun to play with, you know, 4 other people. And you just don't really need a whole lot outside of that. Like it's literally one of those games that you can play while listening to other stuff, or have a stream up or talk to people and have fun without necessarily needing to be too invested in what's going on outside of like positioning, ammo, health, stuff like that.
I jumped in with you on the other night, and I just started. I'm much earlier, having been put in 2 hours, I don't think. But I felt that same vibe, and I find myself wanting to go back for that same reason. Not even live service, jumping in, playing, but just putting on a podcast in the background or a movie in the background and killing some bugs, fighting some Terminators. There's a simplicity to it that, to me, like the type of gamer I am, appeals when I'm tired. I'm not getting into some massive, deep-seated story, right? At least that's been my experience. Rick, what were you going to say, man?
I was just going to say, despite the simplicity that you guys both mentioned, which is certainly true, it is a game that has remarkably competent mechanics as well. Like the shooting mechanics, I actually thought a lot of third-person shooter developers that are higher budget, you know, higher quality with story components, stuff like that, they could take some notes from how, was it Arrowhead? Is that the name of the developer? From how they set up the movement and the controls, stuff like that. It feels really good to play when you can play it, which is my issue.
Fair. I mean, for any listener that doesn't know what you mean, you want to talk about that?
Sure, because that's actually part of what I was going to say next. So it what did come out about 3 weeks ago now? 2.5, 3 weeks, something like that. For the first 2 weeks, the game was borderline unplayable. It was server issues. I had bought it on PC maybe a week after it came out, somewhere around there. It was not this last Friday, but the one before, and you couldn't even play it that weekend. That they had just released a patch, and that patch made it that almost nobody could log in. It was saying something like the server queue was full, but it actually wasn't
Servers
true.
at capacity.
Yeah. That's it. That was it. But it actually wasn't true. It was some kind of bug in their system that was, and not, I mean, no pun intended there, but with their servers that was telling it that the thing was a capacity, but it actually wasn't. And so the next morning, Saturday morning at, I don't know, 10 a.m. Eastern time, somewhere around there, I logged on. I was able to play it for myself by myself for a little bit, which I had fun. Went to play it again that night, still couldn't log in. Went to play it the next night, still couldn't log in. Monday, still couldn't log in. Tuesday, still couldn't log in. At that point, I was within 10 or 15 minutes of Steam's 2-hour refund thing, and I'm like, well, I can't run the risk of. I mean, I'm sure it'll work eventually, but who knows? By that point, maybe no one's playing it. So it is the first game that I've ever refunded on Steam, and it's not one that I wanted to. I could not. The server issues were so bad. My understanding is they are fixed now, but unfortunately, they were fixed 2 days before the game that I've been waiting for came out. So I'm not going to bother now.
You're not going back.
I might eventually, but not anytime soon. because Rebirth is going to pretty much take up my life for a while.
Fair. Logan, when you hear him say that, thoughts? Should he go back?
I mean, it had issues. I never really ran into that. I think it's going to be very anecdotal for that. I know that they had issues, but when they updated the servers with the increased capacity, and then they said that they had the timeouts for them, I was able to log in instantly, and I've never had a queue or a lockout since. So anytime I want to jump on, I can literally just open it up and it automatically logs me in. Doesn't mean there still aren't some issues with the game, but as far as server issues go, I don't think they've had any issues in ever since.
Yeah, this was all before that update, but
yeah, I noticed that too when they claimed that, and they did fix the matchmaking. I could join from my Steam's friends list from there, join their game, and it was instant.
Yeah. The issues that they had have been addressed. I think right now the biggest trouble that Helldivers is going to have is retention. There's a lot of stuff coming out, and they still need to balance end game difficulty compared to early game. I think that they still need to introduce more weapons than they have as far as just game weapons you can use. They also need to see about getting some new worlds in there where they can kind of look a little bit different. Maybe get some new enemy types in there in the future. But for $40, it's hard to argue how good this game ended up being once they got things kind of worked out. And that's something that I think some of the $70 or $100 editions of games that have come out this month can't speak to. And it feels like right now, for Arrowhead saying that they are a live service game, they understand that their base game is the main drawing point, and they're not going to lean heavily into it. I think their Game Pass or their live service aspect of it is the lesser of the two evils compared to most other service games that come out right now, because I think a lot of the other ones, and I think Luke, you can agree, Skull and Bones and Suicide Squad right now have more of a predatory live service aspect, and they're rolling straight into season 1 shortly after launch, whereas as far as I know, everything that's in Helldivers right now I've been able to earn without having to spend any more than the cost of the actual game.
Mm-hmm. The interesting, I think, comparison there is that there's two different problems between Skull and Bones and Suicide Squad, though they do share some issues as well. Pardon me. With Skull and Bones, I do feel that predatory nature. I feel a number of mechanics in that game that feel it's almost like it was designed for a mobile game with timers on it. And then with your boat, you're going and you have to cut down wood for resources. You don't get a lot of ammo compared to what it takes to take down ships or outposts. It was very strange to me, the mechanics that I was running into, and I almost immediately bounced out. I put a couple hours in and I was just like, no, thank you. Whereas with Suicide Squad, my issues with that were not in its live service elements. In fact, I'd argue I actually enjoyed the live service aspect more than the campaign, and that'll be preference based, better no matter who plays it. But at the time that we're recording this, at the time the game came out, the shop was overpriced, but there wasn't a ton of stuff, and it wasn't in your face. It was actually just server problems that were causing consistent issues, like infinite loading screens or getting stuck, not being able to matchmake properly. And they patched it, made it worse, patched it, made it worse again. I haven't gone back, and I'm actually not going to go back, despite, I put 50 plus hours in because it's DC and I love DC. Despite the Black Panther shirt right now, I love DC, and I wasn't happy with the campaign, but I liked the loop. I couldn't even go back for so long that I put it down. I'm like, all right, I'll come back at season 1 when things are fixed. There are too many other things that I want to play. I do want to get into Helldivers. I really like the way Helldivers and Arrowhead have set up their War Bonds pass, which is their battle pass equivalent. I've loved Arrowhead for a long time, and I really loved the first Helldivers. We put hours and hours.
It was awesome.
It was so good. And I will say, in my only 2 hours with Helldivers 2, all of my experience with the first Helldivers translated perfectly. Stratagems were easy, doing things on consoles were easy, weapons made sense. It was funny how easy that transition was, but quietly, I do miss that gameplay. I would have liked a top-down one too. Please make Helldivers 3 or 2.5.
That was you brought up the war bond, and I wanted to call that out as well too. The amount of time that is required to grind, even if you buy the premium pass, is a little too much. Like there's so many war bonds that you have to earn, and unfortunately, a lot of that stuff is not easy to get access to until you start doing the higher difficulty levels. And unless you have like a competent team to do those, it's hard to get the samples that you need to be able to upgrade your ship to be able to make those kind of things easier. So progression tends to get stuck for a lot of folks that are either running solo or running with random people.
Counterpoint, one of the things they did well, having money, similar to Sea of Thieves, like you can encounter real world money in game pretty competently. Is that correct?
If you go through a lot of the missions that are kind of like the campaign missions, then yeah, you can usually like farm out the super credits for that fairly easily. I don't really find them too much like randomly in the world when you're just kind of jumping in, but if you go around like some of the regular missions, I can usually find like a I don't even know what they are, but like the buried containers with the doors that you can blow up and find them in there.
Rick, I felt like I cut you off by accident. No,
I thought I'd say I haven't played it since last Tuesday, Monday, something like that, because that's when I had to refund it before I ran out of time. I probably will buy it again at some point, but it's just tough to justify now when, I mean, again, I'm counting down the minutes till Rebirth here, so I don't know, maybe another week or two once I've put the time into Rebirth to be able to do something else. But what I played, I did like. I do not want to, outside of the ridiculous server issues for so long, I really don't want to talk poorly about the game because the game itself is a lot of fun. And like you said, it feels like Helldivers. Like it feels like you took Helldivers 1, made that same game, and just moved the camera behind your guy, which is pretty remarkable because I actually, having another person being another person that liked the first game, I wondered if it would at all translate from what they did to this, and I think they nailed it in that way.
They really did. It's funny to me to watch Skull and Bones and Suicide Squad come out and really just slam into a brick wall of their own making in a lot of ways. And then you see Helldivers come out and just sell like gangbusters, have all this acclaim, servers are filled up, which there's an asterisk on that because servers were pretty low capacity at first, particularly when you compare it to something like Pal World, which I think we made that point of in a recent XEP episode. But to see the success versus the failure of a AA versus a AAA, next to all the news of these layoffs, there's a lesson in there somewhere. I don't know that I'm wise enough or I've really processed enough to articulate in the time that we were recording this from the most recent round of Sony layoffs and stuff, but there has to be a lesson in there somewhere. Is there not? Anyone, please feel free.
There is. Like they need to do better market research. They would know that gamers don't really want that Skull and Bones with a shop and a season that you will have to buy, etc. You want one price point fixed, and maybe down the line, when the game has proven itself, you add a battle pass and some stuff like that, or cosmetics, like Sea of Thieves did when it released. There was no shop, there was no customization you could buy. It came 1 or 2 years after? I don't remember, but it came later.
It was about 2 years after.
Yeah.
They spent the whole first year of that game tearing up their entire roadmap and building up a whole new thing just because of the knowledge that they didn't hit it out of the park when they launched, and they really had to address that before they had an opportunity. Because I know after launch, they had plans of doing captaincy and pets like shortly after launch, and they had to put those on hold, and they were living off of Microsoft's goodwill for a year and a half, I think, before we finally saw them introduce the Pirate Emporium.
Yeah, but now now big games come out, they don't knock it out of the park. They have a cash shop that nobody will spend on because nobody's playing or like the game enough to give them more money. Like when I see the micro transaction of Diablo 4, I'm like, I love Diablo 4. I bought the collector edition. It's already more than $100, and then you want to buy a mount, and it's 40 by itself. Like it's too much.
Because I think I know what you're talking about. Because I know Diablo 4 has had some issues where some of the bundles that they put out have pretty high prices. I think we've seen some of the prices that they have, but I know that they do tend to put some of their premium currency in with those bundles. I don't think I've seen a cost where it was just one item for too high of an amount.
Maybe it's the bundles, but even the bundles, you have an armor set and like a tombstone.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's too high. That's because they are not microtransactions anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's more than $5 that you pay for a helmet.
Yeah.
It's
I think that the cost of microtransactions or those secondary transactions have definitely gotten a little out of hand. When you can look at any game service or a live service game and immediately check to see like what the currency knockouts are going to be, and every single one of them is going by the Fortnite method of you've got $5 and then you've got $100 and then like small staples in between. You are expected to buy multiple times like that type of cash influx to be able to purchase items and stuff like that. It's like when
and you always have leftover currency you don't know what to do with because the price of the cosmetic is not the price of the bundle that you can pay for, so you have to rebuy another one each time.
I do think that there's a big problem in the industry right now where the rush to get your game out before the game is actually done has really kind of killed our enthusiasm for things like games as a service. I think games as a service is a fine model. I think having a game that is a platform that you can continue to play on post launch is fantastic. But I think that the difference is that you have to earn the value of that seasonal content with the launch of the game. Like the game itself needs to be in a good enough state, in a polished enough state that it justifies the continued development. This is something that we've seen in the past where we just had those expansions. And I think maybe moving back to those expansions for games is the better route to go. Look at Elden Ring. Elden Ring sold tons. They've justified continued development on it with the expansion. Cyberpunk 2077, that game could have had a season pass system. It didn't, and they justified the continued development with expansions. And they even had to cut out one of the expansions because the game just didn't, like, they had too much effort, too much work to put into the actual game before they could actually address getting any kind of expansions out.
They scrapped the I believe they actually had confirmed at one point, but they scrapped the multiplayer mode that they said they were going to put in that as well.
Oh yeah, I forgot they had that
said,
whole intention.
Yeah, they said for, I don't know if they specifically said it was for whatever the next one's going to be, but the idea of multiplayer Cyberpunk is not gone. They still plan to do it. It's just not going to be in 2077. And I was going to actually throw another issue where the industry certainly has an issue, and I'm looking squarely at PlayStation on this one. Not every game needs to cost $200 million to make, and Helldivers. Obviously, we don't know the budget on that one, but I think it's safe to say it was nowhere near $200 million, despite being a fairly long development cycle. But you do need those games. I'm not saying you don't. You need The Last of Us to be as pristine and perfect, for example, as it can be. But you also need to have the games that are $40-50 million coming out, which is probably where I put Helldivers and somewhere around there. Look at what was it? Control. Control, they said, now it was made in Finland, not in the United States, but that had $35 million budget, something like that. And I mean, that game looks better than a lot of games that come out and cost 120, right? So it's like you need to, and this is something Hiroki Totoki said when he's talking about Bungie specifically. That was badly misquoted across the internet, but nonetheless, he had said like studios got to start being more responsible with their time and their money, and and he's right, because it's not the only reason for obviously, because companies that have a lot more money are also making these cuts and stuff like that. But the reality is it's pretty bad, because some of them are just taking way too much time to try to be way too perfect or put too many features. Scope bloat is becoming really bad in certain games, and some of it's got to be reined in. Again, I still say you do need to have some of those big budget ones, but they need to be the ones for just the pinnacle of the mountain, and everything else needs to come in much lower than that and be far more reasonable and get done quicker and be released more often. And I think that could help address a lot of these issues.
Sorry, I got muted. I was like, wait a minute, because I was trying not to type over you guys. The budget thing really does irk me, because we talked with Carrick from ACG recently just about how marketing and game development used to split their budget. Like it was pretty much a 50-50 split, and now more money's into marketing a game. And I think somewhere in there's been a loss of actually making the game that needs to be made. Feature bloat, feature creep, absolutely a problem. Chasing trends, I think, is a consistent issue. One of the reasons we praised Prince of Persia so much on last month's community episode and in general was that this game was an enclosed experience, very high quality, knew what it wanted to be, knew what it was, and didn't try to go outside of that. Some of the most popular games, Game of the Year contenders in the past year, have been single player experiences. And chasing a live service trend is really dangerous, really dangerous. I will acknowledge that Sony themselves have had a really frustrating ROI. They've seen their revenue dip from 12% to 6% on average for the games they're making because of bloated budgets. And I find that really surprising and odd. And I guess I just don't understand development enough, because when I think of Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2, the biggest difference comes in the way of like mocap and voice acting and animation, but the city's still there. So in my mind, a lot of that stuff already existed. Why did that budget kick up so high? What was it that did it? Do I need to see perfect pixel facial animations? Same with Suicide Squad. That's the best facial animation, perhaps second to Alan Wake, that I've ever seen. Did it need to be that for the game you were making? Is that part of the problem? I don't know enough to say, but it's something that enters my mind when I see a game like Alan Wake, which is really trying to capitalize on the intensity of the moment, detail, pixel counts, all of these things. And then a game like Suicide Squad or Helldivers or Skull and Bones, which has brilliant looks in certain places or is trying to do something in certain places. But the one that's most successful is the one that's not counting polygons in nearly the same level, not trying to animate so perfectly, allows itself to be a little video gamey as opposed to trying to be something else. Am I babbling? Like, does this make sense? Is this landing? Somebody.
No, I join you on that. Like, we are playing games because we love video games, not interactive movies. Sometimes an interactive movie is a fun experience, but we don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first game I would recommend right now is Balatro. It's a poker roguelike game. The animation, it's made by one dude.
What's the name of it?
Balatro.
Balatro.
It's
Balatro.
It's the Texas Hold'em, or like the poker game.
It's the poker game. Yeah. You just select your hand, you play your hand,
Mm-hmm.
it gives you an amount of point. You have jokers to have a crazy modifiers, and you just have to beat the blind. You beat the score, and you progress like that. And it's a video game. You don't need, like you said, not everything needs to be Hellblade 2.
Right.
With Ninja Theory, like camera in your face, like millions of points for facial recognition, and AAA, now quadruple A games. Like it's not even a scope bloat. Sometimes it's just they're not in touch with gamers anymore. I feel sometimes.
It's hard
chasing
to disagree.
Tech more than it's chasing what's wanted by the fan base a lot of times.
I had that fear when I heard Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond and Matt Booty talk about their business update ahead of when we found out Xbox games were going to other platforms, which turns out not a bad thing, particularly when you have an industry that is struggling to finance itself. But when they were talking about the new Xbox being one of the biggest leaps in technical power, part of me is like, cool, but how'd that work for the Xbox One X or the Series X? Like, I appreciate the chasing of power, but power does nothing if your library isn't selling itself, selling your box, because I truly think the PS5 is a terrible hardware design, like physical appearance, like aesthetically. And its OS, I think, is a disaster. And none of that matters because I'm having a blast when I play God of War or when I play Spider-Man. Whereas the Series X, I really love its aesthetics. The Series S, even more so. And the operating system on the Xbox, to me, is very intuitive. I remind myself time and again, that's not what matters, because we would have a very different industry if it was.
Ask Nintendo how much power matters.
Good point.
Ask PC players how much power matters.
Oh, that's a different conversation.
You got a different argument there.
It depends on the game.
Yeah.
It depends a lot on the point of the console. I think the issue right now is a lot of gamers aren't caring about 4K. I think a lot of gamers are caring more about actual frame rates. I think frame rates comes up more in discussion when it comes to like what gamers want, because we have things like FSR, we have things like and I'm playing on the other one. What's the other one called?
DLSS.
So we have ways to generate frames. We have ways to generate resolution. We just want a more competent experience when it comes to games. I think at the end of the day, the game being a game matters more than the actual console. The console is just to facilitate that and give us the best bang for our buck. I think the trouble is that people are getting hung up on like one or two options for our graphics, and there's no good middle ground. I don't necessarily need it to be 4K 30 frames. Can I just get like a 1440p at 60 frames and just have it like? But the problem is it's the TV industry that dictates a lot of how these games get like their settings and stuff. So when console manufacturers are chasing the rabbit, they're chasing the rabbit based on what TVs are currently scoped for. And right now there's only two major settings for TVs. It's either 4K or it's 1080.
Ones that have VRR obviously allow 40, but that's a pretty rare. I don't say rare, but it's not like the majority of people have that. I think the big issue is both Microsoft and Sony wanted to chase. I'm not saying they wanted to chase like the ultimate top end performance you could get, but they wanted to chase. I'm sorry, not performance. Excuse me, power. They wanted to chase power, but they couldn't make the systems $800, so they had to really lower the specs. And the reality is they kind of tried to come into the middle ground. That doesn't work very well for either one. You either have, like you said, a high resolution that if you're lucky runs at 30, or you have a performance mode that might stick at 60, but you're lucky if it's 1080p half the time. And I don't know what the right answer is there, because it's either the console costs more or the company loses more, which obviously right now they can't be doing with all the layoffs and whatnot. But they kind of took a middle ground, and I don't know if that was the right call, especially when they were advertising 4K at 60 for almost everything. And I mean, how many times have we really got that? Very, very rarely.
Logan, did you want to say anything else on that one?
No, I think he expressed it really well.
So, in short, we're expecting some industry changes to power, to live service, and to, I would argue, portability, because we're hearing about the Xbox handheld. Switch 2 is probably 2025. We've seen the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, and to me, it's like there are these new pillars of gaming. Console gaming experiences are now going fully mobile. You're playing stuff.
New. It's a comeback.
What do you mean?
Well, the Game Boy was is so old. Like there was the Game Boy, the Genesis, etc. Like the handheld market went away a bit, and now it's coming back. It's not a new trend. We are rediscovering it.
I see. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
I think PlayStation's ventures into like the Vita and the PSP gave us the impression that it was not a viable market, and I think that was due to a lack of support, not a lack of need. And I think that if they had the support, like for whatever reason, Sony is terrible about supporting the additional stuff that they make. They're really good about their consoles, but when it comes to like VR or handhelds, they just drop the ball every single time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are doing new stuff with VR too.
Yeah, so, hopefully.
And what's very interesting about that, Logan, is I would argue, and this specifically is obvious because of Nintendo, at this point, if you want the Japanese market, you have to have a handheld option. Because that's becoming increasingly clear that they just don't care that much about the console experience any longer. Well, the home console experience. But if you can give them a good handheld system, you got them. And I think that's why Sony lost Japan so much and are just so focused on the West now. They kind of need to figure that out.
Yeah, I think that it's clear that Japan is driving the handheld market for them. I feel like the PS5 was really geared towards Western audiences, just by them being as big and pushing out a system that looks the way it does. They didn't care about size. They didn't care about how well it would fit in most homes. And I think that the Switch is a clear indication that the handheld will work as long as you have that form factor. I think it's interesting to me that if Xbox goes into that and if Sony go into that, how is their SKU system going to look out? Because it's right now, I think that Xbox is leading in my mind as far as like having the entry point for next gen be as low as it is and still have a competent enough console to be able to offer good enough experiences. I mean, most of their games are still on Xbox One X at this point. There's not too many that are Xbox Series exclusives, right?
No, not many. Not many at all at the moment. I don't think so.
More the third-party side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. However, I am over any cross-gen, you know.
Oh, yeah, very much so. Yeah. We're 2 years past where that should be a thing.
Mm-hmm. That was the PS5 Pro is expected this year at the time we're recording this. I don't even see a need for it at the moment.
I don't.
You know?
It depends on what it is.
They're not even making games, so
I think here's what would sell most people on a mid-gen refresh. If they did like a PS5 Pro, you offer a much larger hard drive, you put in more RAM, and you keep the processing and graphics roughly at the same. Because I think the processing and graphics right now for the PS5 are not to the point where a lot of people are like feeling like, oh man, I can't wait for the next graphical leap in this. I think a lot of it is I have too many games that I want to play and not enough space to play them. And I just want to have a more built out like ecosystem or like a better OS for right now. I think they could get the size smaller as well too. But I think if you're going to sell people on a PS5 Pro, you got to give the devs more RAM to be able to like have stuff in processing, so that things like DLSS or you know, like have that AI generation of frames and resolution, have that buffer and give people like the space that they need. I just had to delete COD off of my PS5 to be able to install Final Fantasy, and it's like I'm still struggling with space in a time when right now NVMe slots are the cheapest they've ever been. They're you can get a ton of storage for a decent amount of price right now.
Yeah, I put a 4 terabyte in my PS5, but I'm agreeing with you. Remember when the PS5 was coming out and all the argument was, well, you don't need a big one because install sizes are going to be so much smaller. Yeah, that took 6 months until that was completely debunked. Final Fantasy Remake, the PS5 version, was, I think it's 105 gig. That's
Reverse is
that's
1/8
of your PS5.
Very frustrating.
Yeah, like you said, Rebirth was
is
bigger.
1/5.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if you're going to sell a console nowadays and you're going to sell it, I think you can keep the processing speed and the memory speed the same. I think you can keep the graphics roughly about what they are. I think you just need to offer more space and more RAM to be able to, because I mean, PlayStation still hasn't adopted quick resume, and there's no excuse for it at this point. It's a software thing. They can work it out. They can reverse engineer whatever Microsoft's doing to be able to accomplish that. That is a software update that could have been offered that they aren't.
So here's a hypothetical that I was bouncing around. Would you guys rather be PlayStation right now, where you have the number one console, well, perhaps number two, depending on if you're counting Switch, but you're, top of the game in terms of hardware. You've been selling your sequels like crazy. You've been doing remasters. PC is starting to open up for you, but your ROI is low. Or would you rather be Xbox, where you're constantly in third, you're fighting your way through, but you did just acquire Capcom. You just acquire Activision Blizzard. You did just kind of put out some of your best games onto multi-platform to bring in more revenue there. Which one's more appealing? Because depending on who you talk to, it's doom and gloom, the world is ending, or the best news ever.
Well, if I had to be one of the two, it's tough to say. Yeah, right, Nintendo, right. If I had to pick between PlayStation and Xbox, I probably would go PlayStation, because you do. It's tough to say, because I'm gonna be honest with you. I think they've dropped the ball so bad on PS5 that it's gonna, when PS6 comes out, I truly wonder if it's gonna sell anywhere near as well as 5, at least right off the bat. But the difference is, you have the cooks in the kitchen to fix it and get that fixed very quickly. You have the IP power that, I mean, Microsoft obviously has Call of Duty, but being as that's not going to be your console exclusive, it's probably not going to help you sell them that much. But if you're Sony, you got Last of Us, you got Uncharted, you got God of War, you got Horizon, whatever. You got all these IP that, if you somehow figure it out, number one, how to start releasing the darn things, and number two, how to get it done with a reasonable budget and not overspending, you're going to get the people back quick enough. I mean, PS3 was pretty crap for what, 70% of its lifespan. The first 5 years was terrible.
Yeah.
But the last 2 years were awesome. And what happened? They came out, they said all the right stuff when they were announcing PS4, and from day one, that thing sold like fire, right? Mm-hmm. That carried to PS5, where they haven't done anything right in the entire, what do we have, 4 years now of its existence, and it's still selling. So it's still selling because of that. So even if those sales trickle off and you make your fan base angry and people go, I'm gonna wait and see what they do, you have the tools to fix that very quickly and then just get the train started right back up again.
Soaking it.
Yeah, I would prefer to be Sony too, but if I were Xbox, I wouldn't be too concerned either, because, like you said, I just acquired a lot of talent, and to be different, you would have to be more creative on what you on your output. So you rely less on established IPs, and you try to get new ones. Or you capitalize on the new ones, like Hi-Fi Rush 2, for example. Please, Hi-Fi Rush 2.
You haven't given me a committed answer, though, good sir. Who would you rather be?
I'd rather be Xbox. I think I'd rather be Xbox because I like a challenge. So it's still a uphill battle. So you still have to find new solution. You have to find new ideas. You have to change strategy and see if it works. And that's what they are doing. That's what they are doing for a long time that people forgot and then went into an uproar about rumors. So
see, for me, I think I'd rather be Xbox, but only after we just found out that Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment and whatnot are going other places, because now it seems like, okay, I'd rather be them with their IP that have got established fan bases that can go other places in safe capacities, knowing that Diablo and Call of Duty can do well or will do well. I feel like that's a more reliable place of the two, but that doesn't mean as a customer who primarily plays on Xbox, I'm necessarily as happy. But as a company, I feel like right now Xbox has a more stable future. That's not to imply that PlayStation's on, in bad spots, but of the two, it's just a matter that console gaming is so fundamentally different than it once was. Logan, you didn't answer.
I think I would rather be Xbox, honestly. I think Xbox is more willing to stretch on what their console is. And I think that they are going to have more studios producing single player content in the future. I think that their live service and their ecosystem is stronger to be set up for being able to have games like this. I think Sony is on borrowed time right now. They don't have a good person in leadership to be able to lead them into what's going on with the games. They've been stumbling over the prospects of live service games and realizing they're already too late to the party to cash in on that. Their games for their major IPs are good, but we've already heard that Cory Barlog is done with the God of War story. So what's the next studio, or what's the next game from Santa Monica Studio? We don't know. There's a good chance it'll be good, but it doesn't mean it's going to hit with everyone if it's a new IP. Most people don't like playing on new IPs. I think Horizon, while I think is at a really nice IP, I think that series is probably at its end. I don't think that a lot of people bought into either Call of the Mountain or Forbidden West to really justify another game, much to my chagrin, because I think it's a fantastic series. Ghost of Tsushima's really strong right now. I think a lot of people looking at like Rise of Ronin for the filler in between right now. I think Ghost 2 will be really good. Last of Us, unless Neil Druckmann decides that he wants to continue making AAA games at that experience, who knows if we're going to get a Last of Us 3. The multiplayer was killed off. Destiny 2 has seen the lowest number of pre-orders for Lights Fall that they've ever seen for any of their expansions. The next expansion that's due out in June is got like a quarter of the pre-orders that they normally have. So that looks troubling. They have too many single party games in the hopper right now that are just not going to be ready in time for this generation. I think Spider-Man 2 was the last great game. They're literally living off of second and third party content right now, and Microsoft is helping fund that aspect for them. I don't know what their plan is right now, but I think that they need time, and I don't think they have the content to continue to drive that exclusive narrative the way that they were at the middle to end of the PS4, where they had all the studios kind of lining up to have their greatest hits hit right at the end of that console generation. Mm-hmm. And that kind of left them high and dry for the first half of this generation.
Yeah. Well said.
But
Good point.
it's okay because Bobby is going to save them.
Oh no.
They'll bring Sly Cooper back, and it'll be it'll be the beginning. I do want to call out that Mike Micah put out a tweet that resonated so well with me, and I wanted to toss this out before I give up the microphone here. His tweet said, "It feels like 1983 all over again for the games industry. Oversaturated market, deeply discounted games, closures and layoffs, and Nintendo potentially on the horizon with something new."
What do you think that means?
I think that we're heading towards another games crash. I think that microtransactions, live service games, with these closures, with indies kind of being the gems out there that are doing really, really well because they're cheaper experiences with newer innovative gameplay mechanics that are less safe than the AAA experiences that we have now are going to take over. And I think, honestly, with the Switch 2, they have started to allow just about anything to be on their store. I think that the Switch 2 is probably going to be the thing that survives everything. And I think that we may see a collapse in the games industry market in the next 10 years.
What does a collapse look like?
You're going to see a lot of studio closures. You're going to see a huge reduction in AAA experiences. I think we'll have to fall back onto a AA experience for games that are produced for less, that take less time to get out. More things like Helldivers, effectively. I think you're going to see a lot of people not buying into every console. Mm-hmm. I think you'll see more people buying into one or two consoles at most. And unfortunately, I think Nintendo is going to be the one that just kind of stays ever present because they're the ones that, for whatever reason, have operated off of such good margins that they have insulated themselves from the rest of the industry.
Interesting. All right. Soaking it. Any thoughts on his? He's very doom and gloom. No. It's like, oh, it's over.
No, I don't think that's so. Like, I don't think we are going to see a crash. If in the next 3-5 years they manage to course correct and reduce the costs of producing games.
What do you think, Rick?
Smaller games, produced faster, not with less people, but with better management and better expectations too. I don't know if it was on XEP Discord or the trophy room. Sorry, I'm everywhere. Where we joked that Square Enix will be disappointed in Rebirth sales. It's guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
They could sell one game per PS5 out there. It still won't be enough for them. Because the upper management is like that. They are never satisfied
mm-hmm.
of their revenue. And that's the point, that maybe they have to accept less profit for better games and or more games.
Mm-hmm. I really wonder what lessons management will learn, because we've seen so many layoffs.
They won't. They keep their bonuses. Mm-hmm. They are not the ones fired.
Mm-hmm.
Like today, we had PlayStation and EA firing
mm-hmm.
people, and the CEOs still have
jobs, money, bonuses,
dozens of millions of dollars in bonus.
Yeah,
there's no accountability whatsoever at the executive level. That's the problem.
Yeah. It's true.
The accountability comes in on the studios, not on the people that are running the whole project. I mean.
Yep. Well, guys, I don't want to end on that being kind of a doom and gloom. I have had a lot of just bump up my monitor. The month of February, zooming back out, I've had a lot of fun. I've been and very frustrated with gaming this whole month. I have really enjoyed and realized that I'm going to have a good time in Helldivers, which I made the choice to buy into. I really have enjoyed some of the Battle Pass stuff that we've seen in Fortnite and in Halo, as well as COD. So my live services are continuing to do well. I'm excited by the idea that Sea of Thieves is getting a whole new player base influxing. Been really frustrated with Suicide Squad, but per Luke Lohr standard, I got sucked into a DC game, which just happens even when I'm mad at it, and I'm still mad at it. Such a tumultuously strange month for me in terms of gaming, but I have had a lot of fun, and I haven't even had to play any of those JRPG thing or bobbers. Something. I mean,
You don't have
to worry
to
about
have
the
fun.
anime.
I had also a lot of fun gaming
mm-hmm.
in February. A lot less fun hearing about the gaming industry.
Mm-hmm.
And just to shout out some games out of the JRPGs.
mm-hmm.
You had Pacific Drive. That's a survival game where you just drive your car in the Pacific Northwest. Kind of X-File, supernatural vibes. Balatro, which is like addicting.
Mm-hmm.
Last Epoch came out of early access after 3 years
Mm-hmm.
of early access, and to like same problem as Helldivers. They had a full weekend where the logging issue were atrocious because they hit 260,000 concurrent player, and they were not expecting that. Helldivers is like the most fun I had in a squad in a long time, because killing your people with an orbital strike never gets old.
Mm-hmm. Those stratagems feel so good.
Yeah,
and they feel really good to input with a controller or even with a keyboard.
That was a good design decision to have it. You have to input it because it creates a level of insanity and panic, and I like that.
It reminds me of the first time I did active reload in Gears. This feels like maybe not an evolution, but like a parallel. Like I want to execute this action, and there are benefits if I do it quickly.
Mm-hmm. That's a mechanic that I think everybody thought was going to become the next thing, and I've seen it in other things, but it never got anywhere near. Like it didn't get that big outside of Gears, which is kind of weird.
Well, I'm playing Suicide Squad, and it's in Suicide Squad.
No, I guess that's a good reason why it should have died then.
I hate that about Suicide Squad too. I hate thinking about the active reload aspect.
Do you?
When you're trying to traverse?
Oh yeah. It does not pair well when you're stable or hovering. It's great, but if you're trying to actively move, yeah. Can I note on Suicide Squad? If you've ever played Vanquish, once you get good at the traversal, which takes too long in my opinion, the learning curve is too steep and the ability is too slow to get. But you can do some pretty great traversal, and it makes me think of the game Vanquish. It makes me think of Titanfall 2, wall running and such. Like there's a lot of really cool traversal in there that I think 90% of the people that play the game are never going to see, and that's a self-inflicted wound once again, I think.
Yeah, I wish every game had traversal as good as Anthem.
Oh, Anthem. God, I love Anthem. Yep. Rick, any games you wanted to shout out?
Well, I mentioned earlier that I had been really grinding through Persona 3 Reload, and I say grinding through very loosely because I'm not very far, but it pretty much was what I was largely focused on. I'm a couple years late, but I finally finished the main story of Horizon Forbidden West. Just working on the Burning Shores main story now. That obviously got mentioned in Logan's doom and gloom prediction of the gaming space, but I love that series. I don't think
we don't think you're
right.
wrong. I think he's right.
I don't think you're wrong, but I don't think you're right either. I don't think it's that bad, but we'll see. But I love that series. I have long thought that Horizon is a massively underappreciated PlayStation series. I think the story to those is awesome, but I guess the market will dictate whether we get another one. I think we will. I do think they'll finish that story, but we'll see. And then actually, since last weekend, I decided to start a new playthrough of Final Fantasy VII Remake. I obviously waited about a week longer than I should have, so it's not going to get finished before tonight. But I love that game. That's I don't think I went into much detail, but Final Fantasy VII is my favorite game of all time. It's one of the I've narrowed down to three, perhaps the three most important games in my entire gaming history, and it is one of them because it is the one that got me into RPGs. Prior to that game, I had never played a JRPG and I had zero interest. And my one friend, long story short, I convinced him to play Metal Gear Solid. He convinced me to play Final Fantasy VII. We both won because of that friendship, because we both found stuff we liked. And I've become just a massive JRPG fan ever since. So, but yeah, it's my favorite game of all time. I was a little, me, Silken It, Kevin, and Clint had all talked about this in the chat for a while. I was not the biggest fan of the idea of changing things, but I've just kind of accepted that whether I like it or not, it's what's going to happen. So I might as well try to enjoy what they're doing. And I kind of have theories about what they're doing. And if my theories are right, it's not as bad as I thought. I just don't want the whole story changed, but I don't think that's exactly what they're doing. So we'll see.
They're doing the whole story change.
Well, that's what some people believe, but I think it's the original story encompassed within another story that's happening now. I think I think that's what they're doing. Okay.
I have no clue what the story is.
I
know. Logan, between you and me and nobody else, this is the Final Fantasy, dude.
It's true. I'm so glad too, man. I'm so tired of hearing about it.
They finally got there, huh? They finally got to the end. But no, I'm very, very happy with Remake. So this is going to sound weird, but have you guys ever had a gaming moment where I don't want to say it brought you to tears, because that's not it, but it kind of made you emotional?
Yeah.
Because
I'm a man.
And I don't mean like it made me sad. It was more like damn, that thanks, Logan, by the way.
100%.
Because when I first played the demo to Remake, I played that before the actual full game came out. The opening scene where it spins over Midgar and plays the music and it swells with the orchestra and then it cuts straight to the train pulling up the reactor. I was just like, holy shit, I feel like I'm in high school again. This is amazing. And I asked my friend, that same friend I just mentioned, he said the same thing. He was like, yeah, I was quite emotional actually watching that opening scene. So it's a game that really does mean an awful lot to me.
I have those moments often just by my nature. Like there was a moment in Jedi Fallen Order, and that game itself was a journey because it's such a departure from the standard Star Wars games of their time to kind of go Souls-like but be accessible and stuff. And there's a villain that shows up at the end when some doors open.
Okay.
That I was moved like a kid again with that fear of that villain. There was the moment of running and jumping in Anthem into flight felt supremely special because like this is what I've wanted games to feel like for so long across so many superhero games, right? Metal Gear Solid, the first one, when he's rising in the elevator and you're seeing the credits splash over, I'm like, whoa, am I playing a movie? There are a number of these moments when the very last fight in Halo Reach, the very last level, what happens to your character is just emotional every time to me. And so when you start the game up and play again, it's just like, oh. Logan, you're a wet blanket and I don't like you. Well,
never happened. I've never cried in my life.
I didn't say I cried. I said I got emotional. There's a difference.
I mean, you call it whatever you want.
Well, guys, I think that's a good place to stop. I have enjoyed chatting about our Februaries for sure. Silkenet, let people know where they can find you on the old socials, my friend, and point them to any games that you think we may not have talked about.
So you can find me Silkanit everywhere. Threads, mostly Threads. Twitter, I don't do too much anymore. Mm-hmm. And on the XEP Discord or the Trophy Room Discord.
Ugh.
Or the 6-1 Indie Discord, because I love indies.
Yep.
That's after JRPGs. Indies is not really a genre, but they are really dear to me because I really think they are the future of the gaming industry. Mm-hmm. Like Logan said earlier, that's where the creativity is. Mm-hmm. That's where the risks are, where they try. Yep. They try new stuff. Yep. Game we haven't talked about, if you like Metroidvanias, I would recommend Ultros for February. It looks a bit trippy, it plays a bit trippy, but it's a good time.
I think Chris suggested that one last time we were on.
Very cool. Cool. Rick, what you got, man? Anything to let people know where to find you, but also any games that we haven't shouted out?
Well, in terms of finding me, for the next few days, don't try, because I don't want to hear from you while I'm playing Rebirth. Mm-hmm. You don't want to hear from me because I'll be very cranky. But after that, Butch4969 on Twitter, Facebook, Steam, or not Facebook, Twitter, Steam, PlayStation, Xbox. I don't really have any other games to call out. I've pretty much said my piece there.
Okay.
Oh, and in the Discord as well.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, you guys have blown up that JRPG category. It's awesome to watch.
It's been a big week. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Since reviews came out for Rebirth, it's been a big week.
That's good, man. That's good. Logan, how about you, bud?
That's hard to say, because I think we've seen some really good games come out. I think Helldivers is really fun, but at the same time, I think that I'm going to be playing Sea of Thieves. I'm going to be playing Skull and Bones a little bit because of the new season that came out. But I don't know. I'm going to give my hand at a Final Fantasy remake.
Nice.
See if that's actually worth it.
Very cool. Very cool.
It's not too late. I do have one game I didn't mention that I do want to call out, actually.
Absolutely.
Earlier last week, it was Thursday, Techland released big update for Dying Light 2. It's their biggest update of all time. That's firearms, as well as a bunch of other things. If you haven't tried that game, or if you tried it before but fell off, try it now. That is a different game, and it's probably just as good as the first one now, if not maybe a little bit better.
Dead Island 2 or Dying Light 2?
I'm sorry, Dying Light 2. You're right. I'm sorry, Dying Light 2, not Dead Island.
Okay. The only reason I ask is two fantastic games that I fully endorse, but I remember a lot of guns in Dead Island 2.
Yeah. Okay. Dying Light 2 did not have any guns, but it does now. They added them in, and they have said that this is just the first update where they're doing that. They're taking feedback to tweak them, and they're adding more in the future. Mm-hmm. It's already got, I think, handguns, rifles, submachine guns, maybe shotguns. I don't remember, but they said they're adding a lot more, and they have added they've honestly doubled the size of that game. It's remarkable how much more game there is than what there used to be.
I feel like we interviewed them for XEP at one point. I have to go back and look. It's either Dead Island 2 or Dying, because it was a while ago that Dying Light 2 came out, and I really liked that game. I liked both of them, but I liked Dying Light 2 a lot. The verticality in that game was so cool.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. So, well, you guys can find me, any listener. First, I want to thank you three for joining me and being patrons of XEP. Greatly appreciate you guys. Anybody that's watching over on YouTube, patreon.com/Xbox Expansion Pass. We really appreciate anybody watching, listening, supporting. It really goes a long way and means a lot to us for sure. I'm going to call out two indie games because selfishly I did interviews with their developers, and they are live on the channel now with one indie game called Hex Gambit Respawned, which is pretty cool kind of board game in motion that I would point people to, and also a game called Captain Velvet Meteor: The Jump Dimensions, which is an anime-inspired turn-based action game. I've played a good bit of it, or a little bit of it, I should say, myself. Interviewed the devs for both games. Really cool stuff. Put them on your radar. I think you guys will enjoy them greatly. All right, guys, that's going to be it for us. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Take care.